I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Boulder Valley Board of Education for February 23rd, 2016. Laura, will you call the roll, please?
Belval. Here. Benford. Here. Fuqua.
Here.
Garcia.
Here.
Gebhardt.
Here.
Marquis.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I'd like to remind everybody that the mission of the Boulder Valley School District is to create challenging, meaningful, and engaging learning opportunities so that all children thrive and are prepared for successful, civically engaged lives. First item on our agenda, as always, is the superintendent's report. Good evening, Dr. Messenger.
Thank you, President Fuqua, members of the board. Great to have you here this evening, and members in the audience and viewing audience as well. First item of business I'd like to bring to your attention. At your place, you'll find the 2016 annual report that gives a highlight of some work going on in the district. I want to give credit to Jade Cody, who is one of our communication specialists for BVSD, who took lead on this production with the help of many. So I just want to point out a few things. We've got some facts about Boulder Valley School District. We have a pie chart and an update on our budget for 15-16. That's always a reference folks like to make. And then you're featured in the center of the publication and each of the areas you represent. And then we highlight our work around student success, our strategic plan for the school district, and the work we're doing around that with learning talent and partnerships going forward. Then also feature the good work that's going on around our building for student success, our school construction and renovation, as well as innovation work on those areas for the community to see, and also feature the work we're doing around parent and family partnerships, our initiatives which are a part of the strategic plan going forward, and our community partnerships, some of the good work we're doing with our community partners on our food project for our students and their health and well-being, and also, of course, our long-standing partner, Impact on Education, the Foundation for Boulder Valley School District, on the back cover. Again, two of our employees featured there with our mission and vision. So we distribute copies of this to our schools, not every family, but we make copies available at the school. We will be distributing electronic copies of this so folks can access it both on our website and through their computers. And so this is a helpful document if you are doing presentations or want to share about the district at the state or local level. Don't hesitate to just reach out to Laura, and she'll work with our communications office and make it available to you. Again, lots of folks get involved in this project, and I want to thank Jade and Briggs for putting this together. So anyway, that's an update on the annual report. I also want to mention there are a number of folks who are here this evening. They're going to visit with you about the Erie School project, and I just wanted to provide you an update. Not a lot of new information since we were last together. We continue to work with Anadarko, the oil and gas company that has the surface lease on the property that's adjacent to the school, proposed school property. We are also working with the developer, Hines. Chad is the representative. We've been working with him, as well as the community of Erie. Work that we're doing today and anticipating a future meeting to be scheduled, are still exploring multiple options. One is that to explore the 160 acres, which the subsurface mineral rights in that corner of the development, could it be accessed from another drilling location in the development or nearby? So Anadarko and their technical staff have examined that and worked with the developer on options around that. We have also visited about another potential school location in that development in the event that we aren't able to do it on this identified piece of property. We've also been in conversation that if we were to develop the school on the site that has been identified, what would be involved with having Anadarko not develop that property. And so we've been in conversation with Anadarko about that, and also the mineral owners, and also looking at potential health and safety risk around being within 500 feet of a potential oil and gas well, and recognizing that the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission has established a setback at 1,000 feet. So I would tell you all of that only to say we're kind of trying to keep all doors open so that we can stay on track for construction of 2017. Let me just address the timeline a little bit. We've talked about March being a critical month, and visiting with our bond director, Rob Price and Don Orr, what they've described to me is what needs to happen on a property, that property, for a fall opening of 2017 is staging needs to occur in the month of March with really starting construction in the month of April in order to assure the start date around August or early September of 2017. If we get much beyond that, then our construction window gets small. And we've made that really clear to all the folks we're having conversation with what our timeline is. They're very aware of that. So I would just say everybody's working pretty hard to figure out if there's a solution in here that would allow us to stay on this property. In the event that we aren't able to, then obviously we are looking at other potential sites in the development, and there aren't very many options because of the setback from all the oil and gas wells in the area, but we are looking at that and working with the developer on that, including the community park that's on the west end of the property. What we've shared, and we'll share again with you tonight, is that if we are on that track, then we are not going to be able to open by the fall of 17. We would be hopeful, unless we encounter other issues, that construction could occur in a timeline that we would be able to open in the fall of 18 if we have to relocate to a different site in the development. So I know that feels like we haven't made much progress in a month, but all parties are still very involved, and I don't know that we've lined out any of them as impossible, and we're still continuing to explore those. And so we provided an update to the community, I believe it was last week, and once we have an upcoming meeting, which we hope will be in the next week or so, if we have some new information, we'll share that with you, obviously, as a board and also with the community. So that's where we are this evening, and we continue very committed to try to figure this out going forward. Shifting gears, a week from Friday, March 4th, Great Ed Colorado is hosting the Great Future Summit is the title of their day-long work, and so they are doing a pretty aggressive outreach to parents and community members and folks who support public education across the state of Colorado, including Boulder Valley. They presented to our district parent council last week, and I shared with you a communication via email that we've pushed out to lots of folks. So we're trying to support a diverse group of parents from our community. Madeline Case and others are working with us that. We'd like to have some VBSD folks at that gathering. It's going to kind of do 101 as to what is this about. If you've never advocated and worked on this front at all, what does that look like? And then there will be the opportunity for districts who gather as a part of the summit to have some time together as well. So anyway, we're very appreciative of Lisa Wild, who's the Executive Director of Great Ed Colorado, and Susan Meek, who's their communications and outreach staff member, who are working with our community and lots of communities across the state. So if you are interested in doing any or part of that, I know, Jenny, I think you plan to be there for part of the day at least. Don't let Laura know, and she'd get you registered for it. So it's in Denver, and it's on Friday, March 4th. I want to give you a quick assessment update. I've done this, I think, each meeting. I did an interview with Amy Bounds this afternoon, so I anticipate there might be an article upcoming. And so she was interested where we were with the number of students who have opted out of the state assessment that's upcoming this spring and how we will manage that. So I would just say overall, well, our process this year was we sent a letter to all families and a couple reminders that if they want to opt their children out of the state assessment, we let them know what the state assessments were and then what the process would be. And it's pretty simple in that they just needed to do a click-down menu on a Google form, and then they could, and we did this in print for families that wouldn't have access to technology, that they can opt out of any combination of tests they want, or all of them, for their respective grade levels. And it does look a little bit different by grade level depending on which tests are being administered. So I would just say, in general terms, the grade level where we had the highest number of students who opted out is in 9th grade. That is the 9th grade PARC assessment, and total it's probably close to 300 students. They opted out of both reading and mathematics. Each grade level getting younger down, if fewer opted out, and the lowest number who opted out, which is probably 75 to 100. Or in grade 3, the PARC. And then some parents, opted their children out of the science exam and the social study exam at the grade levels those are administered. Some have opted out of the PSAT test, which is in 10th grade required this year as a state assessment. And then on the ACT, not very many opt out of that, but some do for different reasons. A number of our students take the ACT on their own and don't take it at school. It's a state required test, and so they can enter that data if they choose to. So overall, I would say not seeing near the number of opt-outs that we saw a year ago. Now, what we've talked with our principals about, in the event that parents weren't tracking this or didn't see it or didn't get responded by the deadline, I mean, if they come in before the assessment, we will allow them to opt out. We just want to document it. The reason we did this early on was so folks would know what was coming, but also it really helps us with our planning if we know how many students don't plan to take the assessment. What we've conveyed to our schools is that we want students in school on those days, so either taking the test or doing some other activity, but we want you to come to school because that was a fair amount of concern we heard last spring is just the number of students who were out of school. Parents who opted them out wanted them to have a school option. So we're trying to manage this. It's a little bit cumbersome when we have a school that might have a large number of students who have opted out but are in attendance because we don't want to start new instruction at a time that students taking the test would miss the new instruction. So we've got planned activities for students on those days. But we'll provide you updates. I think these numbers will all go up some between now and the test date. Just to remind you, the senior assessment that was so problematic last year is gone. This high school assessment, the state approved the SAT, but it doesn't start until the spring of 17, so this will be the ACT, so that isn't really different than previous years. The other major difference is the park a year ago required a mid to late spring test, and then 6 weeks later, so they did another assessment, 75% through the year, 90% through the year. This year there will only be one setting for the assessment, not the two, which I'm sure will reduce the test time and probably impacted parents' decision to opt out or not. So just wanted you to be aware that that's where we are, and if you have questions at the end of my report, I'd be glad to answer that. And then, again, we'll provide you updates as we go forward. Safety and security planning, I just want to remind you that we are continuing with this and we'll provide a more formal update. We've had a few incidents in the last few weeks. I was just in a briefing this afternoon with Chris Wilderman and his team and law enforcement working back through the Boulder High situation with the cyber threat, the threat that came into Centaurus, the issue we worked with at Broomfield High last week. So we're learning from each of these, both on our communication with parents, and we're going to change a few things so that our communication can be more timely and as thorough as we can make, but oftentimes we're lacking facts, just like everyone is, and so obviously we're not going to miscommunicate or over-communicate. But we're working through that, and we're also working through our threat assessment. We're taking lessons away from the Littleton situation, and that's true throughout the state. So I feel really good about what we're doing. This is a part of our strategic planning process around systems of support for our students, and so Robin Fernandez, one of our executive directors, and Chris Wilderman, our Director of Safety and Security, are taking lead with that, and we'll provide you an update later in the year with that. But I just want you to know we continue that work. It's obviously a really important issue to us. Tomorrow afternoon at High Peaks Elementary School, they will have a blue ribbon ceremony. It starts at 1:30. If you're around and you want to stop in, you can just make your way over to High Peaks or let Laura know. So this is a national recognition under the leadership of Laura Dela Cruz a year ago and her faculty. And so Laura, as you know, has gone to Sanchez, but they've been to Washington, D.C., members of that faculty, to celebrate their success as a school. And so they'll have a school-based ceremony tomorrow afternoon at 1:30 to celebrate their blue ribbon status. It's a nice honor for them. So 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, you approved the indoor air quality contract with the University of Tulsa. So Dr. Shaughnessy and Dr. Mark Hernandez, Dr. Shaughnessy's from the University of Tulsa. Their partner in this is CU Boulder, Dr. Mark Hernandez. We met with them last week, I believe it was the end of last week. So they've initiated work. As I've shared with you before, part of the early work on this project was to get baseline data on schools that were going to experience construction in phase one, and so those are the schools they're targeting on right now, and then working to get some other systems in place. So they're excited to begin this work, and I think CU Boulder is going to be a great partner with the University of Tulsa. They're seeing some nice opportunity. We've also heard from NIOSH, our National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. They have interest in this project. They want to learn from it with us, and so we had a conference call with them last week as well. So I'll keep you informed as more details come through, and later in the agenda this evening you're going to have an opportunity to look at the rewrite of the committee structure, the oversight committee that would work on this indoor air quality project, I call it. It's beyond just the contract that you approved. It's much more than that, but that'll be a part of what they'll oversee. So, Sam, that concludes my report. I'd be glad to answer questions about these topics or any others. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Messenger. Board members, any questions for Superintendent at this point? Tina?
Yeah, thanks for the report, and the annual report brochure looks great. I just have some questions about whether this year, how do we find out about which bills we're taking positions on? In the legislative forum, there were 4 or 5 bills that I had questions about whether we're going to be supporting. And
Okay.
can I just ask you that now, or
Sure. If I know the answer, I'll answer them.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't know that we've taken positions on all of them, but if I do know, I try to answer
Well,
them.
because we used to have a thing last year that said support, neutral, or not against, and I don't think we're doing that this year. Is that right? Or
So we have shared with you the links to ePolicy's work.
Great.
So those are in the weekly updates from Briggs. So, I mean, the reality is if you've had a chance to read Chalkbeat lately, it's been a little slow,
right?
which is not all bad, that there haven't been a lot of bills introduced and not very many of substance around education. But if there's particular ones, there are a few that we're monitoring right now that we, may give testimony on. But if there are any that you have specific questions about.
Yes. Okay. So one is the school districts must post director candidate info on the website, which I thought was great, but I was wondering if we were taking a position on that one.
So is that the one that Casey Becker's carrying around the funding of campaigns around?
No,
Okay.
that's another one. That is the, we need to match the campaign financing of school board elections to the general, which I think is great.
Right.
This one is just, it's very small, but it's that 60 days prior to an election, you need to post the statements from each candidate for school board on the district website.
Oh, I will follow up on that. I'm not
Okay.
familiar with that. I've not been involved in discussion around that.
And then the other one was, then I would ask about aligning the regular biennial school elections and FCPA. That's Casey Becker's.
Okay.
Is that one that would support, or?
I think it's one we're looking at. I mean, I think I would say it's a review right now. We have not taken a position on it. I
Okay.
mean, it was just, I think, introduced last week or made public last week. I think maybe not introduced in committee yet, so.
Okay, and then the others was the School Board Ethics Commission, which
We have not taken, and I don't know if
Okay.
CASB has taken a position on that for those
Okay.
that are on the CASB
and because
board.
there are actually a lot of school board ones, so I don't know if it makes sense for us to sit and talk about them because they have to do with school boards. And then I had another one, computer courses fulfilling graduation requirements.
We are looking at that one
Okay.
to see, our interest in that is the level of rigor, and it's an interesting time because of what we're doing with graduation guidelines. So,
Right.
I mean, ultimately, it would be local that we would determine that. I mean, and it's a little odd given where the state's going with graduation guidelines, because ultimately, if we over time maintain credit requirements, which we may, in addition to assessment or capstone or whatever we do, I think how one earns those credits or demonstrates their competency, could it be done online? I mean, I think ultimately that'll be a local decision around that, so, as you establish that. So I would say that's part of what will be probably talked about in some of these upcoming graduation discussions that we're going to talk a little bit more tonight about.
Okay, and then the other one is transferring immunization exemption duties to CDPHE. Do we have a position on that?
I just got an update on that this afternoon, so we have not had an internal conversation
Okay.
about that.
So those are just the ones that I was kind of looking at when I went through the bills, so.
So let me follow up with Briggs and see, a lot of these, early on, we go in kind of a monitor mode to see, because a number of them, as you know, get amended right away, or a lot of them are sent to a committee that they never come back from, which is where most of them seem to be going, to be killed, so.
Okay, and then the other thing is, could you share the timeline for the Twin Lakes? Do you know which agencies are moving next to consider the increase of density for that property?
So my understanding is it's back before the county commission, that for their consideration. I don't know the timeline. We can find that out. I don't know if there's a projected timeline on the change in zoning for that. So I think they put it back under study because they wanted to pursue both the open space option as well as changing the zoning for the density of the property. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Jenny?
Am I allowed to ask Tina a question?
Sure.
So, Tina, would you mind sending me the bills you're talking about, especially the ones that reference that affect school boards? Because I have to admit I'm a little behind the eight ball, but the CASB Legislative Resolutions Committee will be meeting on Friday, and I'd like to make sure that
Yeah, because you have your
that we
conference
talk
this
about
week.
them.
Yeah.
So yes, if you would do that, that would be great. Thank you. And I'd like to just urge people, the CASB conference on the 4th is kind of a great place to get some lobbying 101, and I think we
Yeah.
all like to think we're a little more experienced than that, but you find out interesting things at all of these. And in fact, I think, Richard, you and I were on the same panel last year. You may or may not remember. Me, anyway, talking about special groups of students and the needs of special groups of students. And Kathy spoke, yes. Were you on the panel too? Oh, not with me. Yes, you were. So anyway, three of us were, so we're all, I mean, we got some fans here. And you've got a better memory than I do, Richard. And so I'm, you know, I hope that we'll get a good turnout, both from Boulder Valley parents and from other parents around the state. And I know that, for example, the Poudre School Board often comes down en masse to attend this thing. Let me see, what was I gonna, I have a note here that so I'm curious about the assessments and whether we're I mean, what kind of value we think there is in the assessments this year, and what we're hoping to get from them.
Well, I would say that we're going to look at those, both the science and the social studies. I mean, to see how they align with our instruction and whether that's helpful feedback to us. Again, it's group assessment, so but we are looking at that in those two disciplines. And I think with English language arts and the mathematics and the PARCC assessment, we're doing the same analysis. I think the reality is there's some limitations around group assessments. I certainly, as I've said before, I think that the greatest value they'll probably have is around our program evaluation. So if we really do think they're testing on standards that align with our content standards, and we think they are good measures, then we can follow that over time to see if our strategies are making a difference. In addition to that, we have our own internal assessment, so we look at the relationship, whether it's in literacy or mathematics, rather what the relationship is between those. I mean, some of what we talked about a week ago with the common assessments, and we'll talk more about that later this spring, is, I think we don't believe they replace the common assessment. We really do think we need school district-based assessments around these areas, but that's not to say they have no value. I just think the frequency of them is, in my opinion, is too much. I think we could test in once in middle and once in elementary and then relate it to our common assessments. I think it'd be informative. I would argue it's helpful to have state comparisons just as another point of reference. So to have them to go totally away, we would lose that state comparison. But I think realistically, probably program evaluation improvement is where they'll have the greatest merit over time. I mean, we've talked before that, it takes 3 to 5 years, I would say, for a test to settle in because they're still looking at items. PARCC is going through a lot of transition right now. What it'll look like in 3 or 4 years is hard to know. It may be gone. And so I think that's another reason why we really want to develop our own assessments. But, I mean, I think the jury's still out how much value they'll have to us, Jenny.
Well, and I think
But what
program
we've
assessment,
shared-
from a school board member's point of view, program assessment is really
Has
important.
value.
I mean, that's what,
And across the state comparative within subgroups is sometimes helpful to us, yeah.
yeah. And then I just want to make sure, as we're talking about threat assessments and security, with regard to the lessons we've learned, especially as we're working with individual students, that we don't use a sledgehammer to treat, to treat, to put in small nails, because I do worry sometimes when I hear about, assessing kids and going on. I mean, I just want us to be very careful not to overreact to what might be typical adolescent behavior in a way that compounds issues and makes problems worse. And I know I've talked a little bit to. I don't have a representative sample, but I've talked a little bit with people on the ground who are really concerned that we don't want to scare kids away and prevent them from coming to us with issues because they're afraid that we're going to go into red alert over things that are really more minor than that. And so I hope, and I trust our staff to do that, but I just would like to voice that as a concern of mine.
I would just say, Jenny, what you've said is very consistent with our philosophy on this. I would say one of our takeaways from the Littleton experience was one of the challenges they faced apparently was internal communication. So the right people had the right information. I mean, I don't want to be critical of their work, but so we've talked about just, again, not over communicating, but having being clear on who needs to know what in a timely manner. So if there needs to be actions in a preventive way, to support all students, including students who might act out, that it's done. But absolutely, our philosophy around students has not changed as a result of this. And the other is some things around the whole threat assessment process. There's some best practices around that so that we are, in fact, looking at the right information, the information that's most helpful, let me put it that way. So, but we'll bring that back when we're down the road. We actually had done quite a bit of work on this, and then the report came out, so we did a pause, went back over, and I just say we've gleaned some stuff out of that that's helpful. I just sat in on this debriefing before at 4 o'clock this afternoon on our situation with the cyber threat at Boulder High, and really having all the right people in the room, including law enforcement, our security team, to say what lessons have we learned from this and how do we communicate. So again, in that case, we don't know who initiated that. But yeah, I appreciate your caution.
And then I'm really glad that we're expanding this air quality work. I think it's a great opportunity to be on the cutting edge, and I'm convinced that while I don't think our buildings are toxic, I think that there probably many of them could stand some improvement, and so I'm glad that.
Yeah, we're excited
And
about it,
I look
so.
forward to hearing more about.
You get some updates. Thanks.
Shelley?
Bruce, on the Erie School,
Yeah.
do you have, can you give us some sense of when Anadarko is going to get back to us on the cost of not developing that property?
We're hopeful this week. That's what we've asked for. We'd like to have thought early this week, but it's already Tuesday evening, so we're just visiting with the attorneys this afternoon. We're hoping this week.
Okay.
We've indicated some urgency around that.
And you said that we don't have many other options, given the placement of other oil wells there. And you mentioned the park is one. Is there another one?
Yeah, there is some property that's south and west that's undeveloped. It's platted but undeveloped, that would be in a location that could be developed. We don't know anything about the land, but just by its proximity, it's a possibility.
So in that case, it would be the same as with the park, it would delay?
Yes, either way, we would lose a
Either way,
year.
delay
Yeah.
a year. Okay. All right. On the subject of opt-outs, are we seeing any trends in terms of which schools are opting out more?
Well, I don't have that data in front of me right now. I think there have been trends, and I think we would see those. The elementary, we have some student populations, maybe more in our focus schools than in our neighborhood schools, that have higher opt-out percentages. And that might be kind of a combination of parents whose children go there. And clearly some of our high schools, I think we will see probably higher opt-out in Boulder schools than we might in our other schools, as we did last year. But I'd probably reserve total judgment on that until we see the final data, but that would be consistent with what we've seen before.
And on the ACT that we're still using this year, has there been any understanding or any thought of adding the writing section to that, just for our district and not waiting for the state to mandate it? I mean, they're not going to if this is the last year of the ACT. I'm just talking about, I'm just thinking about how to get more students to take it, because that's a big disincentive.
Yeah, I don't know, Shelley, what option that would, what that would be and what it would cost. So, I personally have not been involved in that. We can follow up with that and see if I know there's been conversation about it. I just don't know if there's been serious analysis, in part because we know it's going away in a year. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't consider it. But, I do know going forward, some of the conversations we've talked about is if we actually eventually move to a place that students could pick which assessment, that if we keep the ACT as an option. I know districts now are considering, with expense, to offer more than one assessment available to students on district cost. But, again, we'd have to put that up against other budget priorities. But I don't know if we've done the analysis on the writing for this spring.
Okay, I don't know if it makes sense. for
Yeah, I'm
you,
not sure if
but-
it does either. Just in the administration of it could be.
But if it remains an option as we go forward, then
Right.
it's
I think we
something
would want to look at it. We've got a testing committee. So Leslie Arnold will talk a bit later about our graduation guidelines work. And we have one whole committee that's working just on assessment options as a part of the graduation guidelines. And I think a menu of choices may be, what we have a chance to look at later. So not tonight, but later in the process.
Okay, and I'm glad that Jenny brought up the safety and security, issues. I've read some about how when school districts do drills, like military-style lockdown drills, that has a fairly significant psychological impact on kids. So I don't know if that's part of something that you're discussing, but if it is, I would like that to come before the board before we do anything like that, so that we can talk about whether that really adds enough value and,
Right.
in terms of the cost of doing that.
We've had a lot of internal conversation about that.
Okay. It would be nice to have the board up to speed.
Yeah, I
with
just
those.
think we've not done that with students present to date, but we've done some of the law enforcement use our buildings on weekends and evenings, and we have engaged at times when staff have been on campus, not
Not kids.
district-wide, but we share your concern.
Okay. And then just, Tina, if you could copy the whole board on those legislative things, that would be great.
Thanks.
Shelley, Kathy?
Thank you, Sam. I echo what Tina and Shelley said about the safety. I think Channel 9 News isn't really helping us much because they seem to think that these lockdown drills are the standard of care and state of art. That I don't know if you saw the piece, and I think they're heightening this hysteria around school safety to a level that I don't think is healthy. So I appreciate your and the administration's efforts to make sure you're doing everything that we can. So I just want to thank you for that, and thank you all for raising that we look at the whole child in addition to the way we're looking at it from a district-wide basis. So we'll miss what they have to say tonight, which may not be all bad, but I found their reporting to be a little hysterical. And I wanted to thank you for what you said about great education, because as we're going into budget season, I think that the more information that we can get out to people about the budget crisis we're facing across the state, not just in Boulder, will be really helpful. And I didn't tell Laura I was attending. I'm also presenting there, so I didn't know whether I needed to or not, but I appreciate your support and other people's support and encourage people to go to the extent that they can. So thank you for your work on that and your work on Erie and everything, too, as we go forward. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Other comments, board members? I would just echo the appreciation, Dr. Messenger, for your work on the security issues, and Chris Wilderman and his team and all the staff involved in law enforcement, a thoughtful and comprehensive approach. Thank you very much.
We were pleased to see the snow this morning. It's been pretty dry around. We didn't need more fires near our schools, so
Good.
a little nature blessing there for us.
Very good. And the next item on our agenda is public hearing and public participation. The board recognizes the value of public comment on issues related to the operation of the schools. To ensure that our meeting is conducted in an orderly manner, we ask that persons who address the board follow the following guidelines. 1, confine your comments to matters that are germane to the business of the school district. Speakers on agenda items will be heard first, followed by those speaking to non-agenda items. 2, limit your presentation to 2 minutes. If we go over the first hour, public comment will continue at the end of the meeting. And 3, recognize that students often attend or view our meetings. Speakers' remarks, therefore, should be suitable for an audience that includes kindergarten through 12th grade students. Board President may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement that is unrelated to the business of the district or inappropriate for K-12 students. There is a lighting system on the podium. Starts at green when your 2 minutes begin, turns yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and turns red at the end. When the light turns red, please wrap up your comments so that the board can hear from the maximum number of speakers. We have several folks who have signed up tonight, beginning with Kristen Lamb, who has been given an additional 2 minutes from Mike Perlmutter. So, Ms. Lamb, you have 4 minutes. Welcome. Good evening.
Hello again. My name is Kristen Lamb. My husband and I are Flatiron Meadows residents, and I would like to discuss the pending Flatiron Meadows K-8 school. I stood up during the last public comment period and asked for several questions regarding the development of the school, the design, and a lot of my questions were not answered, though there have been some articles out in the newspapers lately that have, in fact, I think, confused the issue a bit. So I wanted to explore those. Dr. Messenger admitted in the Daily Camera article published February 18th that there are no legal barriers to moving forward with building the school on the Flatiron Meadows site as planned, which my neighbors and I are glad to hear. But Dr. Messenger continues to tout the position that BVSD is just really sensitive to the health and safety issues. This comment begs 2 very obvious questions. If BVSD is as sensitive to health and safety as Dr. Messenger claims, will the board be pursuing immediate closure of Aspen Creek Elementary School, located less than 260 feet from an active oil well? Does BVSD consider the 961 students plus staff attending that school to be in imminent danger? And if BVSD is really so sensitive to health and safety, why did they so publicly identify this plot of land in Flatiron Meadows as the future site of the K-8 school, knowing well of the surface use agreement on that land signed by Anadarko in 2007, and knowing of the update to the COGCC setback regulations enacted in August 2013? To that point, my neighbors and I continue to be befuddled by the timeline of events in this matter, and certainly Dr. Messenger's statements to the Daily Camera and the Denver Post have done nothing to clarify this timeline. In a recording of your school board meeting on January 26th, Dr. Messenger stated that the land was dedicated to BVSD for school construction in April 2013, and the setback rules increased from 500 to 1,000 feet in August 2013. but nevertheless, you proceeded to seek a capital bond issue from Boulder County residents in November 2014. We continue to wonder, why did you proceed with seeking the bond issue when you had full knowledge of the potential setback regulation issue, and why was this issue not disclosed as part of the vote? In the Daily Camera article published February 18th, Dr. Messenger stated that in the summer of 2015, the district looked into having the deed to the land transferred and realized there could be an issue. Yet, in an article in the Denver Post published February 16th, Dr. Messenger was quoted as saying that the trouble with the Erie site arose in 2013 when the COGC increased the setback regulations. Which is it? Plat maps of public record dating at least as far back as 2007 and certainly as far back as 2013 show a future site of BVSD K-8 school abutting Kerr-McGee oil interests. Surely someone at BVSD must have been aware of these plat maps. Surely the BVSD name was not erroneously or randomly inserted into public plat maps, and therefore surely someone at BVSD was aware as early as 2007 and at least as early as 2013 of the potential setback issue with the potential oil well. Regardless of when Dr. Messenger or BVSD at large became aware of the issue, whether in 2007 or 2013 or 2015 or at some other time, BVSD nevertheless saw fit to move forward with design plans for the school, incurring a reported nearly $1 million to that end, and making very public the plans for the school, including holding multiple public and semi-public design meetings. Dr. Messenger stated that we thought we could get this figured out. This one hasn't come together as well as we had hoped. With all due respect, that is an insultingly flippant way to refer to actively misleading Boulder County voters, prospective homebuyers, and parents forced into making open enrollment decisions, all in the reliance that the school would be built as promised. At no point before January 2016 did BVSD make public its concerns over the potential setback issues, and seemingly at no point did BVSD have any pause in blithely spending $1 million in taxpayer funds on an uncertain project. We would like to know where the accountability and transparency are. Just to sum up, we urge the board to please move forward with building this site. There is no active oil well. If you do not build the school, there more likely will be an active oil well. We won't have as strong of leverage to prevent it from being built. And so we hope that you would not put our residents in that position to have no school and an oil well and decreased home values. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kimberly Anaya. Ms. Anaya, welcome.
Hi, I'm also speaking about the school. So just a couple of points, just to add on to what Kristen had mentioned. Moving the drilling site, from what we've heard, would cause the developer to have to break contracts with the builders that are there and would require the homeowners that are near those areas to waive their current setback requirements. Given this huge logistical hurdle, how is BVSD still seeing this as a viable option? Because that seems like there'd be a lot more moving parts than just building the school where it was planned for. Also, we've heard that the COGCC would still need to issue a permit if Anadarko ever did choose to drill in that site. And if there was a school in place, it would be far less likely for the COGCC to actually grant that permit. And so we were just wondering why the board isn't taking that into consideration when deciding whether or not to build the school. And then just wanted to mention that we're fighting for this school, and we will fight with you guys if and when oil ever is an issue. And so we're just asking you to please build our school on the current site on the timeline that was proposed. Thanks.
Thank you. And next is Pam Perry. Good evening.
My name is Pam Perry. My husband and I are empty nesters. We purchased a home in Flatiron Meadows subdivision this past September. I'm here today to speak to you about the much-needed school already planned for the middle of this neighborhood. Before moving to Colorado this past fall, I spent 16 years working in an elementary school. When talking to my new neighbors here, I was surprised to hear how the BVSD elementary schools, at least in our area of Boulder, are already overcrowded. There is no way a teacher, even the best teacher, can properly educate an overcrowded classroom full of students, each with varying academic levels, different learning styles, and each with a different unique personality. This area of Boulder County is growing so fast, the overcrowding in the schools is only going to get worse quickly. BVSD has got to build the school. We all knew there was oil and gas in the area when we purchased. BVSD knew there was oil and gas in the area when they planned the school. With the grandfather clause, there is no legal reason not to build this school. Please, for the sake of the children, move forward opening the school in 2017. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Liz Austin, who has been given an additional 2 minutes from Daniel Kitson. Ms. Austin, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. I am here tonight for the Flatiron Meadows School. My family moved here from Florida, and I was born and raised there, and I know firsthand experience of the state of that education system. When I had children, it occurred to me it was my responsibility to give them the best opportunities in life. We wanted a better lifestyle for our family, and we wanted our girls to grow up in an active, kind, and safe environment. So we set our sights on Colorado. After 4 years of saving, planning, and researching, we bought our first house within the school district in Flatiron Meadows because we heard it was the best in the state. The first thing we told our girls was that there would be a brand new school in their backyard. Their faces lit up with such joy and excitement. My oldest has excelled here. She hates homework, but she loves going to school every day. When she heard about the bike or walk to school day last fall, she was eager to join her classmates, but I had to explain to her that we lived too far away to walk, and the roads were too dangerous for her to ride her bike to school. She was very upset, but I reminded her that there would be a school in her backyard soon that she could ride her bike to every day. I spent several evenings away from my family last year so we could attend community meetings regarding this new school. I was so eager to share the amazing ideas and technological advances with my children and neighbors. There are 26 children on my street, and that is not by coincidence. Before winter, they all came outside to play every day after school, and the parents would talk about how amazing it would be to have them go to the same school together. Almost every house in Flatiron Meadows was purchased because of this future school. It breaks my heart to hear several households and families looking elsewhere because of the issue going on right now. I have explained to my children I'm missing dinner tonight so I can be here on their behalf to speak to your board and explain how important the school is. We left Orange County, Florida because of the overcrowding issue, and here I am again fighting for that not to happen. Dr. Messenger, I just implore you to do the right thing and give them the opportunity they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brooke Perlmutter. Is Perlmutter? No? Then we'll move to Karen Sachs. Is Karen Sachs present? No? Okay, we'll move to Chris Bush. Mr. Bush, welcome. Good evening.
Hi, I'm also here to talk about Flatiron Meadows. I am a resident. We're the 5th contract signed in the Flatiron Meadows residence area. We're the 7th family to move in. And the main reason we bought there when the lots were still completely dirt and there was nothing envisioned, not a single home, was because of this school. It's very imperative that the school gets built, and my fears are, listening to these amazing speakers here today, is that some of the reason why the school isn't being built is because of misplaced hysteria and not because of facts. And we need to look at the facts of what needs to, of building this school in regards to the safety of our children. Nothing is more important than the safety of our children, but we also have to look at the facts and not the loudest voices on social media. So I implore you to build the school, build it on time, and build it on the location promised. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Robert Jaffe. Mr. Jaffe, good evening. Welcome.
Hi, Board. My wife and I and my daughter, we moved here from Baltimore 2 years ago with the hope of having free education, public education that was affordable and excellent. Boulder County summed up those requirements. One of the things that I want to talk about is we just need to get this thing done. The synergy of the board and the community will circumvent any obstacles that we have in the future. And let's just share data so we can react promptly, appropriately, for the benefit of the school and Boulder Valley School Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker is, I think it's Dave Hunter. Yeah. Mr. Hunter, hi. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I too was here at the last board meeting. I'm a resident of Flatiron Meadows, very concerned about the latest information, which is really non-information. We've heard the same thing with really nothing's moving forward. We appreciate everyone's help. I implore the board as well as Dr. Messenger to really get on board and make this happen within the timeline that has been slated for 2/17. The anxiety in the neighborhood and everyone and what we're thinking about, we've all invested in this neighborhood, this dream in eastern Boulder County because of this school. I too have 2 young children, a 6-year-old at Lafayette Elementary who has 26 students in her kindergarten class. Is that really what we want to do? We need this school because of overcrowding. We need this for our community. We need this for Boulder County. I ask everyone to do the right thing and to get this school open on time in 2/17. Anadarko has already stated publicly, I don't think it's news to anyone, they've responded to our emails saying that they do not have plans for this well for at least 10 to 15 years. We build the school, we can all work together to make sure that they don't ever get to tap into this well. So I urge you to do the right thing and build the school on time. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our speakers. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We'll move to our next item on the agenda, which is board communication. Board members. Anybody who'd like to begin? Kathy?
I don't have anything to say except thank you to all of the members of the community for coming and sharing your opinions, and for all the people who are watching and people who have sent emails. It's very helpful to hear from the community and taking time away from your family and dinner. We really appreciate the input and appreciate hearing from you. So I just want to thank you all for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you, Kathy. Richard?
I too want to thank you all for coming down and expressing your concerns and around the school issue. And I just want to say that I have requested information around what is the health and safety hazards if you do build an oil well, if you build a school around an oil well. And I think that at least I would like to see all that information before we go ahead and start thinking about building that school. And if there's no health and safety issues, then I say, hey, we should do that.
Shelley?
Yes, I'd like to thank you all for coming forward again. I think I've said many times that it's so important for the community to come and say how they feel about these issues. Otherwise, we don't know. So thank you very much. There was a comment made that someone didn't understand why we weren't factoring some information into our decision. And I would just like to tell you all that we are factoring everything into this decision. And there is no issue that we're not looking at. It's just that all the pieces haven't fallen into place so that we can make a decision yet at this point. I think everyone on this board would like to get that school built as quickly as possible. But like Richard says, we all need to know more about how building so close to this well might affect the health and safety of children. And to the comments we've been getting about Aspen Creek, that was a situation that was in place many, many years ago, before these rules were in place. And of course, we're very concerned about anything that's going on there. We haven't heard any complaints. We don't have parents who are tremendously upset about what's happening there. And so I wouldn't want anyone to think that we don't care about the kids at Aspen Creek, because we do. And if there was an issue there, we would be the first to intervene. So I just want you all to rest assured that we're taking this very seriously, and we're factoring in every single piece of information that we get into this decision.
Thanks, Shelley. Jenny?
Well, I can't add much to what my fellow board members have said. I would like to reassure people who I really appreciate the value and importance of community schools. And so I want you to know that we remain committed to building this school, and at some point far down the road, potentially another school in Erie, not this bond, and not this board, but but we understand the importance of having community schools. I mean, they're valuable throughout our district, but I would like to assure you that you may be sending your kids to Lafayette schools, but the quality of the education, I heard some concerns about the quality of the education they were getting there, and those schools in Lafayette are wonderful. And the fact that, that there are additional students going there doesn't affect class size. I want you to know that we assign the same number of teachers that we would assign for those kids regardless of where they were. So we're not increasing class size to accommodate your children. We may be putting a few more students in the buildings, but we're not putting more kids in the classrooms. And again, the schools in Lafayette are wonderful schools, so while we're hashing this out and trying to make a decision that will be a good decision for kids not only next year, but 50 years from now, we continue to provide wonderful educations for your students.
Thank you. Tom? Yeah. Okay. Thank you all for speaking to us again. We appreciate it very much. We're going to move to our next agenda item, which is an information item on a couple additional elements in our strategic plan, the success effect. Dr. Messenger?
So Assistant Superintendent Leslie Arnold is making her way to the podium. Leslie's primary work is around leading a work around the strategic plan, and so as has been promised and is on your planning calendar, we plan to each meeting through the course of the spring provide you updates. And so the two areas we want to focus on this evening have to do just to keep graduation guidelines, our work in front of you, and so Leslie will visit with you a little bit about that, and also our work around educator pipeline, and Shelley Landgraf, our assistant superintendent, will assist with that. So we are pleased with the good progress we're making around the strategic plan and our 6 priority action teams. So Leslie, if you would please, I think we have probably, I know you have a PowerPoint attached to your documents, and we'll bring it up on the screen.
Great. Thank you. President Fuqua, board members, Dr. Messenger, thank you. Leslie Arnold, Assistant Superintendent for Strategic Initiatives, and I'm here once again to provide an update on the strategic plan, knowing that I've been here pretty regularly over the past few months, and I would like to talk to you about our continuation of the activities that we're going to present to you as we kind of work our way through this school year. So knowing that individual student success is kind of the cornerstone of our strategic plan, just a reminder about we believe about achieving and maintaining really quality learning in the classrooms. We look at attracting and preparing our talented educators and employees in our system, as well as establishing partnerships and all of that coming together to create student success. And as I've been talking to you since October about literacy and early learning and systems of support and then the graduation requirements, we're really talking about the 6 priority action areas and working through those action areas and trying to keep you up to date on what's happening in those with those teams and what we're doing to move a little bit forward. So tonight I'm going to give a brief overview of the graduation requirements update, and as you can see, pretty much throughout the rest of our time for this school year, you will be updated on graduation requirements, and I'll refer to a couple things that were left at your seat as well. But then we're going to have the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Shelley Landgraf, talk about the educator pipeline, since we're moving into hiring season, and she has some information to share about that. So the first thing that I'd like to talk about is what we've been working on with the graduation requirements. So some of this is we're setting our dates. If you remember the last time I was here, we talked about a big kind of master plan of when things were going to be happening and when we're going to be reaching out to the community, and I'll get to that part in just a second. But really what we've been talking about now is preparing for those community outreach sessions, but our testing and our capstone and our graduation guidelines committees have been working in order to start preparing, investigated and preparing kind of a presentation to you that'll be coming to you in June on thinking about what would those tests and exams be in order to prepare our students for exit after high school. What could we look at in a testing situation for graduation with maybe credits or concurrent enrollment components of that? And then finally, what are some of the capstone cornerstones? Like what types of things are we thinking about with that capstone? But before we get to that point, we're really looking at engaging the community, and not just our parents and families and people and business people, but really our students as well. And so you'll see that there's some timelines as when we're not just meeting with the current high school students, because as you know, the high school students, this will not affect them, our current high school students. It's really going to be taking place for our current 7th grade students and beyond. So we're reaching out to our high school students to be talking about what could be different, what could be changed, what would they have liked to have seen, or what could we have done to be looking at graduation requirements to make different pathways. But now starting to engage our middle level students and really talking about what they're going to be expecting in their kind of experience for graduation. So finally, before we move into educator pipeline, we have set the dates, specific dates and locations for the graduation guidelines update and the community piece. And we are, as you can see, that they're running through most of the month of March. There's 2 of them that we will, for sure, Boulder High School and Centaurus, have interpreters there. But there will also be access to interpreters if we get the requests at any of the other sites prior to that. To those meetings happening. So what's going to happen at these community outreach meetings is we're really going to talk about information and the changes and give some of that context to our families that come out, but also talk about concerns and questions. And so they will be working in some consensus circles and talking about what are their best hopes and their outcomes as they start thinking and processing and giving us some feedback on some of the things that we're thinking about. So the information is still, the website is down below for you to look and our community to look a little bit further. And then the dates are now published as well and sent out to not just on our website, but to every middle level parent and family and all of our students as well. So we're hoping to get some good attendance, and we'll keep updating you on that as well. So the next thing before we move, as we move into educator pipeline, and this will continue kind of the overview of our 6 priority action areas, this is really about our talent. And this is, as I said, very timely as we're kind of moving into some hiring season here and as we're looking at getting new educators on board and new administrators. And so what Shelley Landgraf is going to talk to you about is some of the things that this committee work has been, what's been happening with this committee, but as well as their tenet on attracting, recruiting, hiring, and retaining the best talented people. So with your permission, President, I'm going to go ahead and turn this presentation over to Shelley Landgraf.
Yeah, please. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you, Leslie. As Leslie said, I'm here tonight to give you an update on our educator pipeline, which, if you recall from the success effect, is attributed to all employees, although tonight is focusing on the teacher information that we have up to this point. One of our co-chairs or tri-chairs is Barbara Case, president of the Para Association, because the intent is that as we build upon this, it will include and focus on all employees. So as Leslie said, this really talks about the attracts, recruiting, hiring, retaining, and the big part of that is also bringing in the professional learning aspect for all of our employees, whether it be growth in their own areas of their current positions or growth career ladder throughout the district. The key actions that we've talked about up to this point through our committee work is obviously the hiring and retention of our employees, determining key attributes. What are we looking for when we're hiring an employee of the district? We've also done quite a bit of work on our marketing plan to go outside of BVSD and not only through Colorado but through the United States. And then also, as I talked about, the recognition, the professional development for all of our employees. The one thing that I wanted to share with you in regards to this information is our hiring data. We pay close attention to who we're hiring, where we're hiring from, what is their retention rate, why are they choosing and selecting Boulder Valley over many choices that they have. And so if you look at our hiring data for this year, we've hired 253 teachers, and of that, 148, which is over 50%, are new hires. And I think that is complementary of the sense that we have many people that say you only hire, you hire within the district. Once you get your foot in the door, you don't hire new people because it's so competitive. This shows you that almost 60% we're hiring new to the district. So we're looking for that talent beyond our back door. The other piece of this is also our rehires.
We are in a situation in our district that we have many people that have the financial opportunities to take leave of absence, whether it either be a reduction of their current assignment or a personal or medical leave. And so a lot of people will have the opportunity to step into the district through what we call a limited term contract. And that would be, so with those people, I have an opportunity to kind of put my foot in the door, but then I'm getting rehired because I've proven my effectiveness and I was a quality hire as a one-year contract. And then the other piece, 9%, is our transfers. We're a large district, obviously, with 500 square miles. So sometimes people will take the opportunity where it stands, but then throughout their career, they're looking for different opportunities, whether that be the reputation of the school, or it be location, a new drive, a new passion. So I'm pleased with our numbers, that we're continuing to look for talent. In regards to types of contracts, this is important in the sense of when we're looking at people that we're hiring, how many are regular contracts? And regular it's an open position through a retirement or a resignation. And so when we look at that, the information that you see on these three pieces of information really talks about how we're hiring people. So if you look at our new hires, brand new to the district, and that's the middle one, 56% are coming in on regular contracts. So it's not a one-year deal. Limited term, which is a 1 year for whatever reason the position belongs to somebody else, is about 40%. But I think the important thing that I see in regards to our recruiting and our attracting is if you look on the third information piece, when we rehire people, we're actually rehiring almost 78% of our initial one-year contracts. So what that tells me is that we are doing a solid job of when we're hiring a one-year contract, we're really looking at the best candidate. We are fortunate in Boulder that we don't have to say, well, we've only had 2 people apply for a one-year contract, and so we'll take what we can get. We have double-digit numbers of people applying for a one-year deal. And so what this tells me is that we're doing the administration, the building administration, they're really taking the opportunity to hire that 1 year sincere, and they're looking deep into the pool. They're not just, I'm going to hire my neighbor because I know them, but they're really looking deep into what the quality candidate pool's about. New hires. Once again, kind of going back on, what the perception is out in the community. Many times people will call me and say, my salary's too expensive because I'm coming from Jeffco or St. Vrain, that's why you're not hiring me. Or I'll have a brand new teacher call me and say, you never hire new teachers, you only hire veterans. So it depends upon the phone call for the day. But if you look at the years of experience, 0 to 3 years, so almost 50%, we are hiring new teachers, which is great news for our student teachers. It's great news for our substitutes. It's great news from people who come from out of state when we recruit out of state. The other piece of that is that, that 4 to 10 year piece, which is 32%. We do look for experience at times. I mean, it depends upon the opening in the school of what they're looking for, whether it be a skill set. It could be just straight experience because they've got a young core team in there. And then we have some 17% of that 11 to 20 years. And then we have a couple that 3 individuals that we hired that had 21 years of experience or more. And a lot of times those are attributed to a specialized skill that they're looking for. And so, those individuals would come to us. In regards to our ethnicity, 85% are white, and then about 14% are minority candidates. That aligns, we're anywhere typically between 9 and 10%. So this past year, we've actually increased that number. Our goal is to continue to increase that, which I will talk about later on in our marketing plans. This next slide also attributes to where we're hiring candidates from. The good news is that I think if you look at the first bar, it's BVSD, classified, and subs within our system or former employees. So once again, it attributes that to, it may be difficult at times to come in to get a job in BVSD, but subbing, student teaching, can be a plus. Our highest is other Colorado districts, which obviously we're a very attractive district. Our reputation, our collaboration with our association, we get a lot of feedback that that's a positive insight for this district, as well as our salary. Over the past couple of years, our out-of-state has increased dramatically. And part of that is obviously an intentional effort on our part. If you're aware, there is a shortage of teaching. For example, this coming year, there are, I believe, 39 world language teachers that are graduating this year from Colorado universities and colleges. So we will have more of a need than 39 world language teachers for the state of Colorado for districts. So we're having to go, as well as other districts, we're having to go outside of Colorado to recruit. And once again, we strategically determine what those placements are. The other thing that I would say is also we have a great relationship with the University of Colorado. So if you look at with the second bar, 17 of our new hires were student teachers. We want to maintain that. We don't want to guarantee people jobs just because they student teach, but it's also a great way to understand our values and our beliefs and how what we look for in a quality candidate. Survey. Every year we survey our teachers, our new teachers, of why they came to Boulder, what they like about Boulder. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think the thing that we have focused probably the last 3 years on is really our hiring process, making that personal connection, looking at our online application, talking to building administrations about how new educators come into their building, that support piece, that communication. And so I'm very proud when I see that 94% of our new teachers rate the hiring process as excellent or good. I think that says a lot. You know, from the minute they hit the submit button in HR to the day that they land in their classrooms, the first day of school during new educator orientation. We still have reputation and personal connection is a big part of why people come to Boulder or why they've selected to come here. And like I said, I will not go through all of those. On the other end of that, we have really tried the last 4 or 5 years to take some time on creating an application system, as well as supporting the building administrators of selecting the best candidates. And so we filter, and from that filter, they're going through and having that hiring process. With that, once again, I'm proud to say that with our overall process from the building administrators being 93%, when you hire 250 to 300 teachers a year, and you have building administration saying, I'm pleased with my applicant pool, I'm pleased with the process, that says a lot for what we're doing on the front end of our hiring process. The quality of applicants, 95%. When I talk to other HR colleagues, that is an extremely high number. We are fortunate where we can be selective and we can really take candidates that we believe are the best fit for Boulder, not just because that individual holds the right endorsements. The trend that we've been seeing with our building administration is people are moving more towards a performance task. So they may do a basic interview, and then they'll ask candidates, a select number of candidates, to come back and actually do a performance task, whether it's bringing in students and providing a lesson, whether it's giving them scenarios to respond to. But people are trying to see, instead of just what's on paper or responding to 7 to 8 questions, they really want to see them in action with a group of kids, and I think that'll be productive. And I do think that that will extend future beyond the 54%. This is something that I also think goes back to not only creating a quality pool to provide to the principals, but the principals taking much more time in regards to finding the right candidate. If you look at the retention of first-year teachers, 2012, 13, 14 to 13, 14, we maintained 82% of our first-year retentions. The next year we had 84, and this previous year we had 90%. So what that tells me is that when they're hiring teachers, they're feeling more confident that they will become eventually a non-probationary tenured employee with our district. That saves us on cost because we're not retraining people. They get more established with what's happening with the values of the district, and it just makes for a better community within our schools with the retention. Another piece in regards to surveys, we also survey teachers in regards to why they select Boulder and why they stay with Boulder. And so on average, we had between 50 and 60% response for each one of these groups of 4, 10, and 20 to 22. And I'm not going to go through all these, but what you can see is that overall, our numbers are very high, very attractive of why people want to stay in Boulder. Working with students, to have staff say 87% is one of the reasons why I stay here is because of the students. That's a strong message that there's a learning environment within our district. The benefits is also a large piece. Many districts are moving towards reducing benefit opportunities for employees that are less than 1.0, and people are leaving districts because of that. Job satisfaction, once again, we have great community support, local support, association support, which makes a large, it's a great benefit to have because that is not a constant and it's not a given in most districts. And then obviously, the salary is very attractive, and we're able to provide that salary to attract and recruit and retain the best employees. Our marketing plan, in the last probably 5 years, we've really geared this up. I would encourage you to go to our BVSD webpage where it says Jobs at BVSD. We just went live, I believe, 2 weeks ago. And it's a great piece that we've worked on. Melissa Ryberty worked on this in regards to really publicize what's great about Boulder Valley Schools. We have administration, we have teachers, and we have a classified employee who speak directly to why you should come to BVSD and what's great about our district. So I would encourage you to go in there and take a look at that. We are being more strategic on contracts. With our funding situation in regards to when we release FTE, sometimes by the time we release FTE, positions are being posted in other districts. So we're identifying those hard-to-fill positions, and we're bringing those out earlier because we know, for example, that we're going to need bilingual teachers at the elementary level. It may not be at one of our bilingual schools, but it's also a great benefit for Emerald or Creekside or someone else to have that. So we're posting those positions early, and then we'll assign the location at a later time. So that's one strategy that we're looking at. We're also publicizing our district more in national catalogs, either through university partnerships or career-oriented programs. We've also increased our job fairs, once again targeting where we're going to go, whether it's for diversity, other states that have large education programs where the economy is not as strong, and so they're wanting to move out of state, diversity magazines, diversity recruiting fairs also. And that is the success effect as it pertains to Educator Pipeline. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess, board members, if you have questions, we could perhaps take the graduation requirement piece first and then move to any questions about the educator pipeline. So questions for Dr. Messenger or Leslie Arnold on the graduation requirements. Kathy.
I noticed on the schedule, Dr. Messenger, for the graduation requirements, the Arapahoe campus meeting is scheduled the same night as the board meeting. Is there any way, I would love to be able to attend that. Is that one already been published to the community?
I don't know if it's been published. Has it already gone out? So probably not then. I think we just run out of nights, so I apologize for that.
Because I think it would be nice to have board members at some of those, at those meetings. And
Yeah, it would be great to have you attend some of these meetings. I mean, so that particular night we do have a conflict.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up. I'm planning to attend the first one at Boulder High, and hope board members will communicate with Dr. Messenger and Laura their preference for any of these meetings that they can attend, and obviously we'll have to notice those.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We'll notice.
Anything else, Kathy?
Then on the teacher, I have a question about the survey that was slide 17. What was the question that was asked about success of students, and why did those numbers come in almost the lowest of anything on this survey?
So Shelley, do you know how the question was asked on the survey, and could they respond to more than one reason, or was it a forced choice? I don't know that I recall.
I don't know the particulars of how the question was asked.
We can find that out, though.
Find that out.
So I don't know if it was forced choice. I don't know if they could pick any or all, or if it was a forced choice. But so we'll look and see. Okay.
Thanks. Any questions about graduation requirements? Richard.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate both presentations. On the graduation requirements, I know that you're going to try very, very hard to provide translation at Boulder High and also at Centaurus. Arapahoe Ridge also has a high population of Latino kids in there, so you may want to consider that. I plan on going to the Centaurus one. I'm thinking that if you don't get a high number of Latino families in these particular events, is there a possibility, would you consider doing an all Spanish presentation?
Yeah, so go ahead, Leslie. Yeah, I think the plan is to do an all Spanish one.
Great. Thank you.
I worked with Michelle on that.
Thanks, Richard. Shelley? Oh, okay, sure. I really don't care about it.
Okay. On graduation guidelines, what questions or what options or what trade-offs or what kind of template are you going to be using during the community discussions to elicit feedback?
So we're really going to do best hopes and worst fears, a format you're pretty familiar with. We aren't ready to propose templates or pathways. This is really, well, first of all, we are discovering there's very little understanding that this has changed. Not only with our community, but with our own employees. So, so the first part, as Leslie mentioned, will be an education piece, just what you've heard, but that the state has changed this and what the timeline is. And then really it is that as we, because there's a lot of flexibility around this going forward, so we really want to really tap into present students and parents of students who are in high school now or alumni, so we can have a better sense of what's working, that their hope would be we'd retain that, or things we would do differently. But this is very early in the process. And then there will be additional opportunity for input later. So it's not, there won't be templates presented, there won't be pathways presented, there won't be a change in credit requirements. That won't be a part of what this presentation is. It's really more of a facilitated conversation around so that we don't, so it's really data, it's information collection.
Okay. It seems like, though these opportunities with the community are, they're difficult to come by because people are busy and,
Right.
So I'm just imagining myself as a parent, listening to this and somebody asked me what my best hopes are for graduation guidelines, and I wouldn't even know where to start to think about that.
So I think that the presentation will lead to understanding so what are our credits presently? And are we expecting too much mathematics, too little mathematics? Is it the best way to provide the instruction through credit? Or what are these pathways? If we had choices of pathways, what might those be? Would they be in the arts? Would they be in engineering? We had the same kind of facilitated conversation with our student advisory committee a month or so ago. Dr. Hanford and Michelle DeBerry, our executive director, did that. I mean, they really didn't hesitate at all to weigh in on this.
But you just listed some guiding questions.
Well, yeah, so there'll be some, that will be the front end, the load they just did this presentation for DPC, whatever night that was, last week. And so I sat through that presentation, and they didn't facilitate the next piece, but there were numerous slides that got them down the pathway, so to speak. I think there'll be enough content, but the other thing we want to be sensitive to is not to bring something to say, well, we want your input, but we've already decided. So, but I think there'll be enough structure. And then I think depending on attendance and participation, I anticipate we'll come back out again. And, hopefully attendance, folks will miss this. They will. But I think in addition to getting input, it will also increase awareness that this is changing. The other thing that we mentioned when we first introduced this, I do see this evolving over time. Whatever we have for 2021 with our present seventh graders will be collectively our best work because we need to get it as they go into high school. But some of this work will develop over time. I mean, we aren't going to have in place by all the pathways or capstone experiences figured out by a year from now. I mean, we'll have enough to get started, but I anticipate we'll learn from this and continue to evolve. So, and what is our credit requirement going to be? Well, we still have credit requirements. We're not required to by law anymore. Have credit, or we never were, but we aren't required to. But we may choose to, and that, again, we may choose to alter that over time. Not for a group of students. Once they start, they will know what's expected of them, but the students who are in sixth grade now, it may change for them as we learn from this experience. But, it's probably, I would guess this has never been done in this district before. My guess is the Carnegie units that have been in place, they've been altered over time, but not a total conversation about, if we were to kind of start over, what would that look like? And we probably won't totally start over, but it opens the door for that.
Well, how long can it evolve, though? I mean, it looks like you're coming forward to the board in November.
Well, the first draft will be, so that's what I was saying, for the seventh graders. They'll know when they go into high school, so next year they'll be in eighth grade, ninth grade, what their requirements are. But in subsequent years, we could add other pathways or create other opportunities that if you're a senior and it gets introduced, it's probably not going to work for you. But if you're coming into high school 5 years from now, there may be a different set of opportunities than there would be 2 years prior to that.
So the recommendation's coming forth in November for the seventh graders?
Correct.
Okay.
So when they enter high school. We want to, and that's not to say, so they'll enter a high school then the following year, and it'll be clear what's expected. Now, so I'll just give you an example. If we were to introduce a pathway that they could enter as a junior. And they are freshmen when they start the year after next. I mean, there wouldn't be any reason if it's introduced later they couldn't say, all right, then I'd like to go there. But they would know at a minimum what's required for their graduation, so that won't be a moving target for that group. Hopefully there might be expanded opportunities for that group as they make their way, and certainly subsequent classes that we would, I mean, we're not going to, I mean, my hope would be we don't jerk it around so that it's confusing to families and students. But I also don't want to say we're going to lock ourselves into something that we can't give ourselves permission to evolve over time. But yeah, but that group of students would know what's expected of them.
Well, I know what would be helpful to me and maybe to some other board members going forward is if we understood the pros and cons of these options.
Yeah, yeah.
Not just what the community wants. But
So I think
what-
we'll examine some of that. Again, I think this is really about just throwing the net out the first time, and it's about as much about awareness as anything else. It led to really good conversation last week with DPC. We finally actually had to kind of shut it off because we had another presentation from Grade Ed. But it's pretty engaging. I mean, folks really want to know more, but they also have thoughts about possibilities and recognizing that we can't do all things. But yeah, and I think the other is what you'll see in the presentation is the vision and mission and the goals, because there's a lot that we did with the community now 2 years ago around our hopes for our graduates and time that really are reflected in our vision, mission, and goals, that this will give us a chance to consider changing our graduation guidelines so that we can achieve those things in a better way than we are presently.
My question is somewhat similar to Shelley's, just about kind of when you talk about the hopes and fears of parents, is the goal that the schools will have similar options, the different high schools, or will we continue to have schools that will be heavier in capstone like New Vista, project-based learning like Centaurus because of the building, and then pretty traditional at Boulder High and Fairview? And what will be the limitations at Boulder High? I mean, when I think about just the physical space and the amount of students at Boulder High, it seems unlikely we could offer significant capstone experiences for a majority of students. And like, what will those conversations look like in terms of what the schools will sort of parse out to be?
So our conversation, but I would just want to stress it's preliminary because I don't want the community to think we've predetermined this. But as we've talked about this, so I'm going to set New Vista out because they're really not traditional. But our comprehensive high schools, I mean, we do see somewhat of a traditional pathway, probably in all of our comprehensive high schools for this group of students, that might be what they choose to do and demonstrate on an ACT how they do when they graduate. So, and that may be a pathway, a traditional pathway. And I would think that probably would be in existence in all of the high schools, at least for a while. Because again, we just want to be thoughtful about how quickly we shift this. And then what we've talked about is as we develop pathways and then capstone experiences, what we would have is common criteria about what would need to be considered when those are created. So we have comparable rigor and expectations. So we don't want students choosing pathways for the wrong reasons. In other words, we want them to be appropriate for the content. So if you've had a chance to go on the CDE website, you'll see there's quite a bit of information in the toolkit there that will give us some guidance with that. Now, will we have exactly the same pathways in all schools and capstone experiences? I would say probably not, because the reality is we don't now. And so, the work they're doing in engineering at Centaurus is probably our most rigorous work around that in that pathway with great success. And Boulder High has done more probably in an arts pathway. So, I mean, some students, as you know, choose their high school depending on those options, including New Vista. So, we want, I just don't think it'll be exactly replicated in every school. I believe there will be pathways and capstone experiences in all of our comprehensive high schools. How many, how diverse, I think time will tell around that. But there will be some limitations both on the entrance and the staff. I mean, because you have to have the right combination of staff as well. And so, we have enough choice and open enrollment going on in this district. I don't know that it'll radically change that because we have quite a bit of it going on with our present structure. But over time, it may influence where students choose to go to high school because they might be able to get experiences. We've looked at other models around the country. It is, in some ways that's not unlike what we do here, but it might just be more pronounced or more apparent where those pathways exist. But again, I'm going to hesitate a bit on over-describing that because that's really just in my head. I think Michelle DeBerry and Rhonda Hannaford and others, Mark Schaefer and Leslie, there have been lots of conversation around this, but we're anxious to have these community meetings and see what folks are thinking. Again, the conversation with district parents and council was very productive, and I think, Leslie, do we take this to DAC soon? next week, sometime soon. So we'll get their input as well, because I know this is an area of high interest for DAC, the District Accountability Committee as well.
Can we finish the graduation requirements questions? Yeah. Any additional questions on the graduation requirements piece of our discussion? Richard, do you have one more?
Just a comment, I can't be at Centaurus, that's a board night.
Yeah. Jenny?
Can I ask Tina a question? So,
Yes.
so again, Tina. So you said something about Boulder High School not. Did I understand you to say that you didn't think we'd be able to offer capstone experiences at Boulder High School because it's too large? And I just want to make sure I understood that, and then say surely that can't be true.
No, I think that it couldn't be offered for every student all the time. Like, so it was more about at what level and how many pathways
And that
could it
wouldn't
be.
truer at Boulder High than in other places.
I don't know. Because of the physical space and the number of students, it's probably easier to do it at New Vista than Boulder High.
But I don't know.
I would say if we retain our traditional scheduling, it'll be more of a challenge. I would suggest we might vacate that traditional scheduling and give kids, students, especially juniors and seniors, more flexibility in their day. So time will tell whether we are ready for that. But I think that would help address access to community as well as work within the school as well. But if we keep our traditional schedule, our custodial schedule for up to 18 years old, then it's going to be a challenge for us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that sort of initial conversation because I
But,
think it's
but
interesting.
again, early in the process.
So thank you for raising that issue and for responding. So is there a handy place where we board members can look and see what graduation requirements are now so that as we go forward with this conversation, we can kind of compare what
Yeah, we
have
can
now?
share that with you. I think what we could also do is share the PowerPoint with you. I know they were working on some final revisions because one slide in the PowerPoint has that, but it also might help address some of the other questions that I was referring to earlier. So you can see the slides it'll go through. In the event that your schedule doesn't even allow you to get to a presentation, you can at least see that. So maybe we could follow up. I know that Michelle DeBerry was doing some final touches on it, but one of the slides has the graduation
Well, then I will
requirements.
cross off the question about can we see the presentation?
so we'll-
But I would
we'll-
also
we'll
love to
just
see what the current
send that to you
graduation
as an
requirements
attachment.
are because, I mean, I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So, and then the other, could you talk a little bit, because you made a remark about flexibility on tests we offer students, and I know that the state has a menu, but you're thinking that we may not choose to offer all of those tests to kids, or you made some remark about the flexibility, how much flexibility we're going to give in what we offer kids, and I just
So that'll be
wondered.
one of the issues we work through, because there are probably, so I'll give you an example. ACT Work Keys is one of those that's on that. One of the reasons, this is used a lot in the southern part of the United States because many employers recognize Work Keys as a competency level around skill development that that's a consideration as a part of their application, so it has high utility. When I was in Greeley a number of years ago, I worked with Ames Community College. We started to try to get that into the employment workforce. It isn't very present today in Colorado, and so that might not be something students even be interested in. But I actually am a strong supporter of Work Keys. So, I mean, but that would be an example of one that if it made sense for a pathway or for a student. I mean, but there are others. I mean, some of them probably won't go away, like SAT and ACT. But that's the work that they're doing right now, is looking at what utility they have, what the cost is associated with those, because the state probably is only going to pay for one. And so if we give a menu, I've argued already to the new commissioner that it would be great if actually the state allowed this menu of options, and that they would give us a voucher or whatever, so much per student that we'd put in the bank, and then if we create a menu, then we can apply that to that, and there might be additional expense. So, but I would say, and he was actually receptive to that conversation, so which would then have to go back through legislation and state board. But I mean, I think there are some options around that. But I mean, we won't say we're going to limit it by money, but we're also probably not going to go through, because you have to set up testing centers, and so there's some expense beyond just the test itself on some of these. So those are just considerations. And do they have value to the community colleges? Do they have value to the four-year colleges? We did a deeper dive on this, and it'll be talked about a little bit in the presentations, is working with admissions officers for our own colleges and outside of the state to make sure that we're considering that as we put together exit options, including testing, but much more. Because many schools have, post-secondary institutions have moved away from dependence on a single source of assessment. They've moved to other means. So we want our students to be smart about that.
And I could see that might create some challenges for assessing or for program assessment as well. And I'd
Right,
like to
right, right.
hope we stay on top of that, although that's not necessarily related to this discussion. So let me see. And I know it might be why I'm just wondering if we're looking at some examples of districts around the state that may already offer some capstone experiences.
We are.
Because I think we could probably learn from some of those really nice programs.
You might recall in the presentation you and I did in December, when the Colorado Department of Education there, I was part outspoken about the need to do that and have co-ops around the state and do that, and they've taken me up on my words, and so we've been invited to help kind of look at not only what exists, but also how could we work together, because I don't know that our peer districts, I don't know that we need to all do these independently. There would be some value of us probably developing these together, because maybe an engineering pathway at Centaurus doesn't look much different than Smoky Hill. I mean, I don't know, but, or maybe it does. But those are conversations that have started across the state right now. In some districts, our rural districts, our small districts probably don't have near the capacity to do this that we might be able to do over time. So I'm actually hoping some of the co-ops will involve our partner districts, large and small, so that students, regardless of where they reside, have that same opportunity in their setting. But and there may be some limitations of what they can do because of just size and scope.
Other questions on the graduation requirements? Kathy?
Thank you. I think, Bruce, you had started to address it, which is I would think many of our parents are going to want to know what this means for higher ed admissions.
Yes.
And so do we have a slide that will address kind of where CCHE is on this and how we're going to be addressing that issue when they
I would say
path
we
they
aren't
take
going
to college?
We probably won't have a lot of description of that in this round of presentations. It will help inform our work as we develop it, and certainly as we introduce options for students, however many we're able to offer. That will be a part of what we will provide. This is kind of counseling. Andy Tucker, and our Director of Counseling, is involved in this conversation as well. And again, we don't want to create locked pathways that students have to stay in a track. I mean, we really want the flexibility, but we also want students to be informed, knowing that when you start at age 15 or 16, by the time you're 20 or 21, our institutions of higher ed may be changing as well. But just recent presentations I've attended, that whole entry level has changed a lot. So some of the discussion we had around a single state assessment, not that we shouldn't have a state assessment, not that SAT and ACT are okay, but that's really not, there's not high dependence on those anymore in post-secondary institutions for admission. Doesn't mean it isn't part of their portfolio, but they're looking at lots of other things, and our students should know what those are. So it will be a part of our work going forward.
Any other graduation related? Okay, Shelley, then Jenny.
Just one comment. I get a little nervous about some of this because I don't think that our job should be planning for the future workforce of America. I believe that we ought to be training kids who can think. And that's supported by this, the evidence that people tend to change jobs 6 or 8 times, or careers even, in their lifetime. And I get really nervous if we're just preparing engineers.
Right.
So I hope when we're looking at graduation guidelines, we're looking at what we know to be the reality, that people will change their minds about what they want to do, and they need to be prepared at a very deep level to do about almost anything. So
I think that'll be absolutely. I mean, our innovation guidelines that we've shared with you, we're going to come back to those. If you look at those are really applicable across a lot of areas, and those will be threads we pull through.
So I just want to double check, because we know that many people won't be able to make these meetings, but if we're really interested in informing people, I hope we're thinking about online opportunities for people to educate themselves about this. So you might even, you can figure out how to do that, but the presentation, if you share the presentation with us, it might be available online, and you might even consider taping, videoing an input.
Yeah, I think ongoing opportunities, avenues for input will be helpful as well.
Right. And for self-education, so if I can't go to the presentation, I could see it some other way.
Good suggestions.
Any questions then, if we're done with graduation requirements, on the educator pipeline piece of the presentation, board members? Tina?
Yeah, and just first a comment, everything looks great, and it really does come down to our teachers, so it's great to think that, and to have data that demonstrates that so many people are satisfied with the process and that we're able to rehire a large number of them. The question I had is, when we look at the retention of first-year teachers and the retention surveys for years 410 and 20 to 22. Did you notice any trends across schools, in particular between those that serve high levels of low-income kids? Just because when you read the news, it talks a lot about how there are retention issues with the Title I schools that sometimes are perceived as more challenging environments to teach. So I'm just wondering if we saw any trends within our district that backed up some of those kind of news articles.
So Shelley, I don't. So sounds like we don't have that data. I think it's a great question, and I think retention. Well, all the questions, all these issues. I think just to disaggregate it by not just schools, but by populations, might be really informative to us because, I mean, we don't want stagnation, but we do want stability, and so. I will just tell you my observation in this district is that's we don't reflect the national trend around that, but I think that would be data that would be helpful to have. So let's we can talk more about that internally about how we might capture that data. I mean, we're sensitive to not have people feel like we're looking over their shoulders. So sometimes we don't have them self-identify school or level just because sometimes that can affect the participation rate and the results. But that doesn't mean we can't. I mean, some of that data we have without actually going through a survey. We know how long people have been in buildings and what their assignments are. So, but I think it's something we should look at.
Other educator pipeline questions?
Yeah, just very quickly. It seems like we know why teachers and staff are staying in the district. Do we know why they leave?
Yeah, that actually is an area we're looking at. So looking at some exit work. I mean, I think one of the things we've talked about is we struggle retaining ethnic minority educators, employees, but probably not just teachers. And some of what that is this isn't their home community. And so what can we do? We actually, Leslie and I were just in a conversation up at the university with the University of the City of Boulder having this very conversation about college-level students, employees, why they come here, and do they feel welcome here, and do they feel like they can stay here? And their survey data would indicate that they don't, and they struggle with that. So that day we had a community conversation about what could we be doing to make it a more welcoming community for all employees, but particularly ethnic minority, and there might be other minority status besides just ethnicity that might. So that is something we're interested in. One of the things we're working with Lori Shepard, the retiring dean of the College of Ed right now, is really looking at how we might kind of create a pipeline for BVSD graduates, particularly bilingual, maybe ethnic minority graduates, to help with scholarship if that's helpful, to get them to stay, because we think some of that is this is their community, and that would be an issue that they'd feel more comfortable staying. I mean, obviously quality and all that would still be a part of it, but it is actually an area we're looking at, Richard, because we think that, I mean, obviously our interest isn't just increasing our attraction of hard-to-hire employees, ethnic minority or bilingual or whatever, and not have them stay with us. I mean, one, it's expensive, and two, we don't ultimately reach our goals. So that is something we are looking at.
Another question regarding that. We know that, or at least I've heard, that schools of education have declining enrollments.
Significantly.
And we want to increase the education pipeline. Are we doing anything in the high schools to increase motivation around students wanting to go into the teaching profession?
So this conversation we're having with the university here, and I would say around the state, because I also sat in on the same conversation at UCD, about really, because that pipeline is drying up in significant ways across the country of folks entering our profession. So there's multiple strategies. This is one of them, is to, well, one, make our profession more attractive. So we have some work to do at the Capitol on that. And the other is really, recruit earlier on and let young people see this as an attractive profession and explore it like they might other professions. I would say you would think we would do that well as educators. I would say we have a couple of examples in our own district where we do it well, but I don't think we consistently do it well, not just in BVSD, but across the country. So that's another area we're looking at, but working in partnership with post-secondary ed on that.
So on the subject of retention, we do exit surveys.
We do not do exit surveys on all employees, I don't believe. We have done some exit surveys, but we do not consistently do exit surveys. And I think that would, if we can have capacity to do that in a meaningful way, I think that would actually be helpful to us. I mean, sometimes we know. because they're
Right, but
retiring
so
or
that's
whatever.
not a plan for this educator pipeline?
I don't know if is it a strategy? Okay. Within
To
the-
give exit surveys to everyone?
So,
Okay, I think that that's where you'll find your answers to those questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a teacher email me today and said she's leaving the district because she has 35, 37, and 39 kids in her middle school classes, and not enough special ed support to function well. And she basically can't operate that way anymore. So I think that kind of feedback from hundreds of teachers would direct us in ways that would be really important on, how to fix what's going on in the district. Not that we don't know some of that anyway, but it would be certainly valuable information, I think.
That was actually what I was referring to earlier about doing some work at the Capitol. Because I think as we continue to underfund public education in this state and every state in this country and have unreasonable requirements like student performance as a part of teacher evaluation, I mean, we are creating untenable conditions for, having a daughter in that very situation. It just isn't all that much fun anymore. So I think that some of that we do need to do, that we can work on locally, but I clearly think it's bigger than, if we're seeing the pipeline dry up across the country, it's not just what's happening in our district or our state. It's a big issue for our profession right now. But I think the exit surveys will help us with that.
Other questions on the educator pipeline? Tom?
So just help me understand on the hiring process. Survey respondents, are those all applicants or just the ones we hired that are responding to the
Shelley,
survey?
Tom's question was the survey response on, were they just those who we hired, or did we survey? Yes, did we serve?
Those were not rehires.
And
No.
not applicants that we didn't hire?
Correct. This is just
So only people that we hired actually responded to the survey?
the survey that says, why did you select BVSD?
No, it says about the hiring process, what they felt.
That's who we hired.
Okay, so they all got jobs, so I would hope they would be happy. So I'm not sure that's a
The question was
good,
about the process, not getting hired.
I know, but they did get hired, so they probably feel good about the process if they got hired. So I might suggest that we see if we can expand that to a more representative section of those applicants we got to see, is it really as good as we think it is, or are we fooling ourselves?
Sure. Might be hard to get people who don't get jobs to respond to a survey, but we can try.
We may learn some things, though, in the process.
Yeah, might.
Any other educator pipeline questions? If not, I would just echo Kathy's earlier comment. I'm not sure how to interpret that one response on student success, 60% across years of experience. I'm not sure what to make of that. Oh, Jenny, you have an additional question?
Just a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So just a short one. So how many student teachers do we sponsor every year? Do we keep track of that and know?
We average a little over 150.
Okay. So it's really a fairly small percentage of the student teachers that we actually end up hiring. Oh, that's interesting. And then there was a slide where it talked about tasks that principals might have interviewees do. And it said, come prepared with a letter of introduction. And I know it's just a minor thing, but what does that mean?
How would you introduce yourself to your class, to your community?
Oh, okay, thank you, okay. And then, I would say, anyway, to evaluate this process, I would say any way that we could make judgments on the quality of the teachers that we're getting would be my preferred way of seeing how effective we are in our hiring process, just for what it's worth. But it sounds to me like you're thinking about that. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Several years ago, we talked about the teacher insight tool, and at the time, you said that we were going to be testing that, validating that. And then the next time I think I asked about it, you said that principals were happy with the people we're hiring. That's not really a validation of that tool for principals to be happy, because they might have been happy whether the person's gone through that process or not. So I'm wondering if we're seriously evaluating that tool at this point. If we're actually using best practices, there's nothing that says that's a best practice. So I'm wondering what we're thinking with regard to that tool.
So as we are refining the educator effectiveness evaluation tool, which we are now in third year of implementation, looking at those whom we hire and how they perform according to the judgment of the professional supervisors that evaluate them, is how we'll begin to validate that. And so part of it is we needed to get that to be stable, and we are still working through some of that. But just if you look down the road, if we've set professional standards, and we have in this district, and we say that's what we value, and we have a quantitative ranking evaluation system around that, then over time, if we think we're hiring the best of a candidate pool, and what we find over time is they perform high on our own evaluation tool, that would be a validation of the instrument. Because now that's not to say people we didn't hire wouldn't have also done well, but we can't hire everybody. And what we want to be sure is that we're hiring people who are of high quality according to the standards by which we rate them on. So that's so I'd say we're getting closer to having we need to have a stable evaluation tool before we can do that, and I think we're getting closer to that. Because we are still doing training around. So if you have a standard, internal reliability on a standard means that if Sam watches someone teach and looks for a performance within a standard, and I do too, and we see we rate them very differently because we don't understand the standard well enough, then we don't have a reliable tool. So we are working to get so that we understand the standards, meaning the supervisors, and the performing educators as well, so that we actually know what a high level of performance is, and then begin to look at the relationship over time with the teachers we employ. And so one of the things I also look at is those that we non-renew each spring, to say, well, we thought they were going to be high quality, why weren't they, or weren't they, and if not, why not? So that's the process we're going through right now. And really that's the work that these companies who develop these tools look at, is what, and you can use different criteria, but the criteria we use in this district are the performance standards around the educator effectiveness tool. That's how we evaluate staff. So, but we're not there yet. I mean, we are getting closer to that. And I still trust principal judgment quite a bit. We press them pretty hard that if this isn't a teacher of the highest quality, then we have 3 years to make that decision. And if we're not sure, then we're going to non-renew them. And so because that's why we have a probationary period, is 3 years, is that we should be able to make, through professional judgment, if our leadership is where it needs to be, they should be able to determine whether this is a teacher we want to work for us for 20 years or 30 years in 3 years. If we can't, then we've got work to do. And I think we can, but we need to be disciplined about that. And one of the things we've done is to work to have the same principal with the same teacher for those 3 years. When I came here, we were moving teachers pretty helter-skelter around this district. And so when it would come time for that fourth contract, we'd make a renewal decision. We didn't have any, in some cases, principals that had worked with that person more than 1 year. And so they didn't have a deep understanding. We have changed that practice, and we really want our principals to know those whom they're supervising well. My preference is it's who they hired. They supervise them for 3 years or less, and they make the final recommendation on their continued employment of the district. If we can get there and have quality evaluation tools in place, then future boards and future superintendents and future others will see over time a higher quality workforce. And some of our challenges that we still deal with is I believe that wasn't consistently done, not just in this district, but in many districts. So that's the work we're trying to do.
So, of course, it would be great to have a great evaluation system that is internally, consistent. And, that should tell us everything we need to know, with or without the teacher inside tool. So assuming now we've had that tool for the whole time I've been on the board, so that's over 4 years, we've probably not renewed teachers who have taken it and passed it.
Oh, we certainly have, Shelley.
Yeah, so what does that tell us then?
We're using principal judgment around that.
Are we comparing their scores, the non-renewed teachers, going back and looking at their scores and comparing them with scores of teachers that we have renewed to try and validate that test?
We have looked at all of that.
Okay, well, I would like at some point to see how that looks.
Okay.
Because I'm not convinced this is good money spent.
So we need to know who to hire before we can evaluate them. So when we have over 350 applicants and over 3,000 teachers in a pool, we need to know where to start. And so we use multiple measures. The Teacher Insight is just one of them. We look at a number of things so we know who to hire. If they've worked somewhere else, then we get references from them. We have to have some way to narrow the pool.
Right, and we've talked about
so
this
then once
before.
we narrow the pool, then we need to make sure that We aren't guaranteeing that everyone we hire will be in the top 10%. And we're certainly not guaranteeing everyone we don't hire is not in the top 10%. Again, our job isn't to employ everybody. Our job is only to employ those that are of highest quality and demonstrate that to us over time. So I'm sure with, thousands of employee applicants for jobs, there are thousands who we don't hire. And they might think they didn't get hired for whatever reason. But the reality is, even if we change how we hire, there are going to still be thousands who don't get hired because we only fill 200 a year, 150, and we have thousands in our applicant pool. So that's the good news. That's our challenge, is to tease those to the top. And even if we do this perfectly, there are going to be exceptional teachers, candidates, who we don't hire because we don't have that many openings.
Right, and
I
that
mean,
goes without saying, I
yeah.
think, Bruce, you can't hire everyone. The question is, and it's come up over and over and over again, is this tool being used as a screening device, which people say it is, or is it being used as one input?
It's being used as one source of input
That's
as a
what
part
we're
of our screen.
told by you, but then we're told by teachers.
How
that
would they
it's a
know that, Shelley?
Well, that if they didn't do well on that test, then they're not.
They don't know their score.
They don't go the next step.
They don't know their score. No employee knows their score. So
Well-
they don't know that they did well or not. We have hundreds and hundreds who, if you want to use the score, who score well above the national average. We never hire. We never interview.
Above the national average on
Of
teacher
this,
insight?
right. That we never take to the second level because we can't. Physically, we can't. So absolutely, they don't know their score, so they don't know if that was the reason they advanced or not. And if they hadn't advanced 10 years ago, what would their reason be? What would they blame then?
So Shelley, are you looking for specific additional info on the use of the
Yeah,
Insight
I would
tool?
like specific information on the teachers that we don't renew. How do they do on Teacher Insight compared to the teachers we do renew? So we have at least a piece of data to look at, to compare, and to see if that tool's valuable. It
Have you-
wouldn't tell us everything about it, but it would tell us something about it.
I hear you. Could you put that in an RFI, maybe? And that, okay. Any other questions on the educator pipeline piece of the presentation? If not, thank you very much, Leslie and Shelley, for all your work on these two critical issues. We look forward to the community meetings on the graduation guidelines. And coming up on our 2-hour mark, we can take a short break, and then we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. I will call the board meeting back to order. The next item on our agenda is action items consent grouping, including approval of minutes, February 9th, 2016, agenda setting, approval of minutes, February 9th, 2016, regular meeting, that's 7.1 and 7.2. 7.3 is approval of minutes, February 16, 2016, special meeting. 7.4, amendment to the construction manager general contractor contract for Summit Middle School bond project. 7.5, Identity Management IDM Solution, Encore Technology Group, and 7.6, Internet Service Provider. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any board member would like to pull? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion from Kathy, seconded by Tina. Any discussion of any of these agenda items? Hearing none, Laura, would you please call the vote on the consent agenda?
Belval.
Yes.
Benford. Fuqua.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gebhardt. Marquis.
Yes.
Myers. Motion passes.
All right, moving on to agenda item 8, 8.1, approval of air quality committee. This was in your packet, board members. The proposal based on the feedback we gave Dr. Messenger, the establishment of the both the District Air Quality Committee and the Casey Air Quality Committee. I believe to begin, I need a motion to approve. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. So firstly, so a motion to approve from Jenny. Right. Second from Tina. Discussion. Shelley, I know you have some suggested changes.
Yeah, I passed them out. I made some recommendations in this proposal, some revisions that I think reflect our discussion a little better. I encourage you to look at them. Basically, under purpose, it's adding.
And wait, just to stop, you're talking about the Casey Air Quality
Casey,
Committee
yes,
specifically,
sorry.
not the
Casey
District Committee.
Air Quality Committee. They're not major changes. I think they just enhance the proposal and make it a little more reflective of our discussion. For example, under purpose, it is that the team, we would be adding periodic walkthroughs that the team would do to assess air quality. And we would give the team some more authority to make additional recommendations on air quality. Under membership, I added a community member because we actually refer to community member later on in the proposal. And we had talked about doing that in our discussions. And for the appointment process, I just wanted to make very clear that the board has authority for selecting those team members. So I think I tightened the language up a little bit. And for officers, I'm recommending that we establish co-chairs and that one be a parent or community member and one be a board, or not board, staff member, a BBSD staff member, and that they share the responsibility for establishing the agenda and all of the other functions listed under that responsibility. So, like I said, they're not major changes, but I think that they're good changes. Oh, the other thing was I added in that the committee could disband itself prior to a year if it wanted to, if there was no more work to be done or if everything felt good. And they could also extend it as long as they would like. It wouldn't automatically end with the formation of the district team. There could be very specific issues at Casey that still need to be resolved that the committee should continue to work on. I don't anticipate that would be the case, but I think the committee should have that opportunity to make that decision. So those are my recommendations.
Okay, and I think when we come to it, it'll be a motion to amend. Is that correct, Melissa? If we choose to bring Shelley's changes forward? Okay, so we have discussion first, though, of these proposals from Shelley. Tina?
Yeah, so my first question is, do we have a May 2016 testing planned? Is that part of our plan?
I do not believe so, actually. Don, or do you know if we have a May 2016? We've had some conversation. I know we have one that's just happened or has happened in February.
Additional testing?
Right.
No.
Right. So this was our last episode, was this one. I mean, not that it couldn't be, well, I don't want to commit Mike Van Dyke. Certainly we could do the air quality, but the survey piece. But, I mean, I think we just have February scheduled.
Okay, I had read that we were doing testing in May somewhere. So
No, I
if we're
think
not,
I
then we
might have
can take
referenced that
out.
once. I think that
You did
might,
reference that once.
I think that
Yeah.
might have been an error on my part.
Okay.
So
I
then
think
I
the
would-
original plan for Mike is just through February.
My only comments, I think these are all great points. Just just on the second bullet, on the periodic walkthroughs, just maybe something that just says as needed. just so they, it's at their discretion, you know. And then, and very similar, as you had put, additional actions as necessary, I thought was great, so that it just keeps it kind of loose depending on what happens. And I think, yeah, that's all I had to say.
Other comments? Yes, Jenny?
So this is the first time I've seen this, and I'm not that fast a reader. Do you think we could take a couple of minutes just to
Yeah,
read
sure.
it through, please?
Sure, we'll take a quick break and reconvene in a couple of minutes so that board members have a chance to read these proposed changes from Shelley. Okay, reconvening the meeting. Again, discussing the air quality committees. We had a motion to approve both. We have some suggested modifications from Board Member Benford on the Casey Interim Air Quality Committee document, and we've taken some time to review it. Any additional questions, comments, board members? And what I'll do is, when we get to that point, walk through the proposed changes one more time. But does anybody have any initial comments or any more discussion on that? Dr. Messenger?
No, I think what we would propose is that if we're going to accept these proposed changes, that we would do a substitute as the amendment.
Okay.
So Leslie Stafford, our Chief Operating Officer, who's kind of taken lead on this, is making notes. So what we want to do is to make sure before break, Tina suggested a change. So, we'll just need to check and make sure people are okay with the changes to the change. And then, I think what we discussed over break, if this is the new, we just substitute this.
Mhm.
And then that'll be the Casey one. These are all in one motion, so then we probably need to take care of that, and then we need to deal with the district one. So we just need to clarify if there are going to be changes to this proposed substitute language, what those changes might be, and then we'll try to do a complete substitution.
Okay.
As opposed to trying to do this word by word.
Yeah, that makes sense. So any additional questions? Yes, Tom?
So, yeah, at the very last part of the document under F, meetings, the original language said the Casey Interim Air Quality Team shall sunset upon the formation of a district indoor air quality committee, which would happen immediately. So I think that is a good change, Shelley. But I would prefer that the board decides whether the committee goes away, just like we approve the committee, rather than the committee itself. And we can take their recommendation, but the board needs to decide to disband the committee or not. That would be my comment.
So you could say upon recommendation of the committee and approval by the board?
Right. That would be good.
There's a proposed modification. Any others? Hearing none, let's walk through the proposed changes then. So the first, I'm looking at the red line copy. Review upcoming air quality testing and staff survey reports scheduled for February 2016. And then it had inserted May 2016, but Shelley, we've crossed that out, right? Okay.
Right.
Conduct periodic walkthroughs to assess air quality, and then Tina added as needed. Let's see, disseminate all
So I'm not objecting to this exactly, except I'm not sure, I just have kind of a funny feeling about assessing air quality by walking through a building. I mean, I guess it works. I mean, we all do it, but could you just elaborate on that, please?
It's one of the recommendations in the Tools for Schools EPA program, that you just walk through the building and feel how the air feels, talk to people, ask them how, it feels to them. You don't have to be an air quality expert or anything to do that.
Just kind of a walkthrough and a discussion with, okay, okay, thank you.
I walked through Casey last spring before and after the teams were in there, and just as a complete layperson who's really not that sensitive to anything, it was noticeable, and I felt it was of value. But that's just one anecdotal thing.
I appreciate those remarks. Thank you very much.
The fourth bullet point, disseminate all testing, survey, and walkthrough results to the Casey community. The fifth bullet point, recommend and oversee additional actions as necessary to ensure satisfactory indoor air quality at Casey. Any discussion or issues with those, board members? If not, I believe the next proposed change in this is adding a community representative. Does anybody have concerns about that? All right.
However.
Yeah.
No, never mind.
Okay. And then looking at the appointment process, suggested change that the Board of Education may solicit additional members for the committee if desired.
So can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, please.
So what are we thinking that would look like?
I'm thinking what that, and the reason I put it in is if a selection of people comes before us and that all seems fine, but there are people that really want on that group, that weren't part of that committee that was recommended to us, then we would have the option of putting them on the committee. So the board could add additional members if we wanted to.
So that's what it means, but that's not really necessary, is it? Because that's what review and selection by the Board of Education would mean, right? Is that we
Well,
would
no,
look at the
because
people.
what's going to come forward is a slate of people, right? And what if we all agree that that's the right slate, but somebody wasn't included in that slate that wanted to be and had good reasons for wanting to be, but they weren't included in that slate? We could say, okay, you can be on it.
Oh, okay, I don't think solicit is exactly the right word, and I will just say, having sort of helped with the review of the CBOC, the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, that's, I mean, one of the things that if the whole Board of Education is reviewing, that's one of the things you do, is you say, well, what about this because you get an opportunity to see everybody who applied, and you get to say, well, what about this other person? Or it's more like, is every group that needs to be represented? And,
Well, maybe
so we would do
solicit's the wrong word. Maybe it
Yeah.
should say place or something. You know, I still think there's room for a situation where something may not come forward to us and we may want to add somebody at some point.
Well, and I think if we review, I mean, I don't have a huge objection to this, except I think that's what a review and selection by the board means, is that we would add, that we would make additions, subtractions, or deletions as we thought would.
I just fear that someone may not be part of that process and may want to be part of it later, or may want to have been part of it at that time and wasn't included or something. And we need to have an option where we can add that person.
And so, yeah, if a majority of the board chooses to add that additional
Yes.
person, that'll be okay. Richard?
Yeah, I would think that, I like that, because let's say, for example, that all of these members are represented, et cetera, but then I find that, whoa, there's not even a single person of color in here.
Exactly. It could be for any reason like
Yeah,
that.
and I'm not objecting to that. I think that's what the process of review means. I just don't know.
Yeah, it's additional language that we hope will not be needed, but
Yeah.
putting it in here as a, okay. Can we look at the next suggestion?
The only thing I would add, I think they should go through the application process. In other words, if we have an application process, if we solicit other people, then I think they should file an application. We don't just bring them in on the side, because that won't feel very good for people who actually made application. That'd just be a thought.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And do we need to codify that, or can we just agree
No,
that?
just
yeah,
as long as we all
okay.
agree,
All
that's
right.
what we do. We just have to call it an application.
The next suggested change is individuals selected will be appointed to a one-year term or until the committee determines there is no longer a need to continue. I believe Shelley explained this as we might wrap up earlier, you might stay longer, depending on the committee's desire. Any questions or comments about that? No? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Jenny.
so, I'm sorry. And I talked about this with Shelley, and I think I understand it, but I think the term should be 1 year or less if the committee sunsets sooner, rather than appointing somebody for the entire tenure of the committee if the committee goes longer than 1 year. I think that the appointments should still be for a maximum of 1 year. We could reappoint people, but this language looks to me like people get on the committee and they just stay forever. And I talked to you about that, Shelley, and I don't think that's what you mean, but I don't know that, I think the language is clear, so.
Do you have a suggestion on how to clarify that?
I think it should still be individuals selected will be appointed to a 1-year term or until the committee sunsets, whichever happens sooner.
Until the committee sunsets, or whichever happens sooner?
Yes.
Individuals selected will be appointed to a 1-year term or until the committee sunsets, whichever happens sooner. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Next proposed change is under Section E on the officers' chair. The KC Interim Air Quality Team will select one BVSD staff member and one parent or community member to co-chair the team. So I believe the change is from chair to vice chair and vice chair to co-chairs. And the co-chairs will conduct meetings, call special meetings, and perform other duties. The co-chairs, in concert with the BVSD Air Quality Coordinator, will establish the agenda for each meeting. So this is 3 small language changes in this paragraph to move from chairperson and vice chair to co-chair model. Any discussion or questions about that? Okay. And the final proposed change I see here is at the very bottom under meetings, the KC Interim Air Quality Team shall sunset upon the recommendation of the committee and approval by the board. That's a combination of Shelley and Tom's suggestions. Everybody okay with that? Okay, so I believe the process is, if we are okay with this, we would need a substitute motion to amend?
Well, I think
or
the
to
motion's already
replace?
been made, so I think you just need to vote on this as the amended or substitute motion. Then once you do that, then we'll vote on action to approve it as amended. So it'll be 2 votes, correct?
Okay.
So
So-
if everybody's okay with the language, Sam, that you just went through, I don't think we have to go through it again, then if there's an affirmative vote on that, then that's done. That becomes the substitute, and then it becomes the new
Great.
one to vote on.
Thank you. So if everybody's okay with this language, I need a motion to substitute this language in the Casey Interim Air Quality Committee document. Motion from Shelley. I need a second. Second from Kathy. Laura, could you call the vote on the substitution?
Belval.
Yes.
Benford.
Yes.
Fuqua.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gebhardt. Marquis.
Yes.
Myers. Motion passes.
All right. I believe now we need a motion to approve the substitute version. Oh, oh,
The motion on the floor is with that substitution in, and I don't know if there's more discussion on the
Okay.
other committee.
So if the other, so because the motion is, so if we
For
want to
both.
just set that there,
Yeah.
then we can see if the district one is okay or as amended, go through
Okay.
the same process,
Yeah.
and then we'll take the whole package through.
Great.
This is the one that represents the Casey one now.
Thank you. So we've substituted the Casey version. I didn't hear any concerns about the district version, if there are any. Yes, Tom?
Right. So one of the discussions last time, I suggested modification of the document to take out the naming of a contractor within the document, and that still remains in there. So I would hope that this committee would survive for some time, regardless of what contracts we have and who we might have as a particular contractor that would be a consultant in this case. So what I would recommend is that we strike any references to University of Tulsa or Dr. Shaughnessy and replace that with air quality consultants.
Okay. So I'm not sure how many times that appears in the document.
Only a couple of times.
Does anybody have a concern? Tom is wanting to generalize that language so that if the committee sticks around after this contract and we use different people, this will still be applicable, I believe. Is that the goal of your?
That's correct.
Okay. Any concerns with that? Kelly?
So, I understand the reasoning behind that, Tom, but at some point, we won't have a contractor in here either, and this should be done by our indoor air quality coordinator.
That's a good point.
And so maybe that's what it should say, contractor/indoor air quality.
That's a very good
something
suggestion.
like that.
Right, very good suggestion.
Tina?
Where does this document live in our, like on our website? Is this considered a regulation?
No, this is, I mean, it would rest in the minutes of this meeting.
And that's pretty much it? Okay, because, I mean, some of our committees we put into policy, like we have the preschool committee, and so this won't go into policy, right?
You could pass another policy later and insert it, I suppose, but I don't think that's what this is being proposed
no,
as policy.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
But, so it would be, if affirmed by the board, it would be, our reference would be, I mean, we would publish it in other places, but, yeah.
Any other comments? So I need a substitute motion?
So I think Tom proposed an amendment, so you need to vote on amendment that those words be struck and that they be replaced by indoor air quality consultant / indoor quality specialist. And then if the board votes on that as agreement, then you need to vote on that as
Great.
amended, okay?
And Tom, is that the language satisfactory to you?
I think so. Maybe slightly different, Shelley. What was it you said?
I wouldn't put / indoor air quality specialist because that could imply a contractor again.
Right.
I think I would put / BVSD indoor air quality coordinator or something that makes it BVSD have the responsibility there.
Okay.
Indoor air quality consultant / BVSD indoor air quality staff.
Yeah, or coordinator.
I think I would use the word staff because coordinator that's a
Okay.
position by name.
So I believe I need a motion. Tom?
So I move that the references to University of Tulsa or Dr. Shaughnessy be stricken and replaced with the wording you just said. Why don't you repeat that, Sam?
Indoor air quality consultant / BVSD indoor air quality staff.
That's it.
Okay. Second? Shelley? Any additional discussion? If not, Laura, could you please call the vote on this substitution?
Belval,
Yes.
Benford,
Yes.
Fuqua,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Gebhardt, Marquis,
Yes.
Myers. Motion passes.
All right. So we've substituted language in both of these. Now we vote on the original motion with these
On the
substitutions.
Action, yeah. So now we need a motion to approve these as amended. It already is on the floor, so you just need to vote, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just know that you're voting on those that have been substituted.
Thank you very much. So Laura, could you call the vote on these two committee proposals with their substitutions that we've just approved? As amended.
Belval,
Yes.
Benford,
Yes.
Fuqua,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Gebhardt, Marquis,
Yes.
Myers. Motion passes.
All right, thank you, team. We have a final item, study items, agenda setting. We will be talking about agenda setting at our gathering tomorrow, but are there any specific items people would like to bring forward for agenda setting at this time? Jenny?
So I have a question. What happened to when are we still going to hear from the Ideal School Day people, and when would that be?
We do not have that scheduled, a work session for that. We've talked about it in agenda setting, but we don't have anything scheduled. That committee is done. They've handed off the recommendations, and so we're getting ready to communicate their recommendations. So we could schedule a work session to talk about those recommendations if you'd like.
Oh, I would think.
It's not scheduled at this time.
I would certainly
There's
like
no
it.
plan to implement anything until a year from this fall, so we could talk about the timing of that.
Okay, well, I would certainly like to hear what they finally ended up on, what they finally.
We'll send you a copy of the final recommendation. So I just want to remind folks, I think you received an email this afternoon, if you had a chance to get the email, that there will be food available at 4:30 tomorrow afternoon. Sam and I met with Heather this afternoon. She'll be ready to start promptly at 5. So if it works that you can come by and grab a little food ahead of time, that'd be great. Otherwise, it'll be here when you arrive. And we're scheduled to go from 5 to 8 tomorrow evening. And we kind of have a working agenda that we built off of where we left it last time. So we'll build off of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, look forward to you tomorrow. We'll be in this room, okay? Similar setup as last time.
Without any other agenda setting items, we'll see you all tomorrow. Meeting adjourned.